What's up everyone, OJ here, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about a franchise that I don't talk about much on this channel, and that is Donkey Kong Country. Believe it or not, I actually used to be a big fan of the franchise back in the day. I used to play the games all the time, go through, collect all the secrets, try to get every single banana coin, and all of that, and I love the original trilogy, and I even played like Donkey Kong 64, didn't like that as much, but recently, all we've gotten pretty much in the past decade when it comes to Donkey Kong games is Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Both really good games in their own right, and I've beaten both of those games multiple times. I beat the original Donkey Kong Returns, or Donkey Kong Country Returns. I beat that on the Wii, and it came out on the Nintendo 3DS. Beat that in 3D mode, even though it's not as good because it's 30 frames per second. And I also played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze originally on the Wii U, and I also beat it again on the Nintendo Switch. So I've always been a big fan of it, but platformers have kind of just fell out of favor for me. I used to like platformers a lot more when I was younger. Now I'm more into RPGs like Fire Emblem and games like Super Smash Brothers, a fighting game like that, or even Pokken, for example. But I still feel that there's something that they can do with this franchise in order to make me more interested in it, even though if there was just the next Donkey Kong Country game. So let's just talk about that in general, the next game. If it's a pure platformer, don't get me wrong guys, I am going to be all over it. I think that the Donkey Kong Country Returns / Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze formula is really good, and they can make another game in that same vein to kind of round out that trilogy of the newer style Donkey Kong Country games. So I don't feel that they can go away from that. However, if they added in some extra elements into the game to kind of change up a little bit of what it is, because Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and Returns, those are pure platformers. There's not a lot of action elements too much to the game, and I personally feel if they added in some more action elements in terms of what Donkey Kong is actually supposed to be able to do, because Donkey Kong is strong. He can punch people, he can wind up, he can do all sorts of cool stuff. Same thing with Diddy Kong, but the games are just more pure platformers. So here's a list of things that I'd actually like to see them add into the next Donkey Kong Country game, and effectively making it from a pure hard platformer to a pure hard platformer with some more action elements in there. And I mean by like beat 'em up elements in there. I would love to see Donkey Kong being able to punch people, being able to learn a couple different moves here and there that maybe you could invest banana coins into. I think that would be really good outside of just, okay, I'm going to roll into somebody, or I'm going to jump on their head, or there's going to be this animal friend of platforming. Now, don't get me wrong guys, I still want to have a lot of platforming elements in there. I think that that's what makes the new games, Donkey Kong Country Returns and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, that's what makes them so good. Having those minecart levels, having the different levels with the animal friends, that stuff is great. But it would also be cool if they added in some more action elements, kind of like 2D beat 'em up type of stuff into the game as well. Made it a little bit more dynamic. They can add in different types of levels when you have that, when you put in more action elements, like a Shovel Knight, for example, how you can do certain attacks and get different things in that game, yet there's still hardcore platforming elements in that game as well. And that's kind of what I'd like to see with Donkey Kong, because pretty much each Kong only has like one or two unique things about them, and some of it's not even to where it's an attack. For example, like Diddy Kong has like a jet barrel or whatever, but that's great. But wouldn't it be cool if he kind of had a few more different things? I think he has like a peanut gun, there's like a bubble gun or whatever that Dixie has, but there isn't a lot of elements to each of the Kongs, and I personally feel that they're being shortchanged at times, considering if you look at what they do in, for example, like Super Smash Brothers. Like Donkey Kong has so many cool things that's actually pulled straight from the Donkey Kong lore for the most part in terms of his moves, and yet he can't do any of that in the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze games, or he can't do a lot of that stuff. He can do like the ground pound and stuff like that, but I just feel that there's so much more potential to kind of move the franchise forward. But I also do feel that you don't want to stray too far away from that hard as nails difficult platformer, because that's what makes Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and Returns great. And I love that they returned to that per se with Donkey Kong Country Returns back on the Wii days, because we really hadn't seen much from the Donkey Kong platforming outside of like the bongo games and some of the other stuff that they had that was really kind of weird, and they tried a lot of different stuff. But some of the stuff that Donkey Kong got, like the clap mechanic and things like that, that type of stuff that they added in there would make for a great action action game or more action elements, which Jungle Beat and some of those games played with the bongos did have that. So if you can kind of combine what they did with those games, combine the platforming and the pure platforming, the difficulty of what they did with Tropical Freeze and Returns, I think that you can have a very solid exclusive Nintendo Switch game that kind of reinvents the franchise one more time over and brings in more people into it that like a game like Shovel Knight or kind of like those 2D beat 'em ups along with the platformer type of games. I would just love to see Donkey Kong kind of go in that direction a little bit more. Doesn't have to be super in depth. You can have just maybe 5 or 6 moves per each one, have a little bit more enemies that come up on the screen and you can kind of beat them down, and then also have those platforming elements that people just know and love. And I'm only talking about this because, like I said, I used to love Donkey Kong, guys. Donkey Kong Country was actually like one of my favorite franchises out there, and it's still very good. I think it's just as good now with Tropical Freeze as it was before with the original trilogy and everything. I know with Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong 64, more like it, that they actually had some different skills and different stuff that they can get, and people like that about the game. The problem that I had with that game is not that you can get different skills and it was cool, the peanut gun and stuff like that. It was the fact that there was just way too much collecting. Like the collectathon stuff was way too much. Each character had their own collectibles and you had to go through with each one of them in order to get everything or 100% of the game. That was just way too much collecting for me, but they should just not do that, but put in some of the cool skills and other things that you can earn in the game. I feel that banana coins, being able to unlock new skills through that would be dope, and it would just be a lot of fun and kind of put in a new wrinkle into Donkey Kong. Now, some people are probably asking, okay, well, how did Donkey Kong do? Like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze compared to the Wii U and also the Switch. The cool thing about this franchise is that it's not dead by any means when it comes to sales, because Nintendo actually banked way more off of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Nintendo Switch than they did on the Wii U. On the Wii U, the game was $50 and ended up getting price drops fairly quickly because it didn't sell as fast as maybe Nintendo would have thought it would have sold, even being priced $10 less after the delay. Now, however, if you look at Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Nintendo Switch, that game was $60 and pretty much hasn't gotten too many discounts, not anything official at this point. You can get it for cheaper in some places, but pretty much an MSRP of $60, so $10 more than the Wii U game, and it's a port, and they didn't add a ton of different stuff into the game, just an easy mode, Funky Kong, so not really much added into the game outside of a couple other things mechanically for being able to play portable play, stuff like that. And that game is actually well over the Wii U version. I think the Wii U version didn't even break 1.5 million units. The Nintendo Switch version of the game is like 2 million units plus. So the fact that that game has done so well at that price that it was at just shows that there is a thirst, there is a hunger for more Donkey Kong, and a great Donkey Kong, because that was just the port. That was just a port of the game, and it did way better than what you saw. Didn't sell as much. Obviously, we know that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze probably would have done a lot better if it was on a system that sold more. Donkey Kong Country Returns did way better because it was on the Wii, so obviously it sold better, and of course the Super Nintendo and other systems. But I do feel that if they made some tweaks to it, and if they still had that hard as nails platforming, I think if they put that out and a new game on the Nintendo Switch with Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong and some other people that you can use, collect skills, kind of do different things, still have that platform, the mine carts, maybe you can even jump up and do different types of attacks with certain characters, because sometimes certain characters, if you jump up into the air, you're defenseless, like you can't do anything. I think Dixie Kong, she can swing, but I don't know if that hits the enemy or not. When you do that, you might still get hit, so from what I remember, you do. So I do feel that actually adding a little bit more combat mechanics in there, and even making the game harder when it comes to different difficulty options, because there never really is a difficulty option in Donkey Kong games. It's just hard. So adding that in there and being able to put in more replay value in that way too would be really cool. Would be really cool as well. Or they can just leave it that way and kind of balance it the way that they want to. But either way, I'm excited to see what's next with Donkey Kong. Now, the only problem here is that this is all fine and dandy, right? Even if you wanted to have a vanilla, straight, more like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze type of game, The problem is, like, who's gonna make it? Because Retro Studios has been making Donkey Kong for the past 10 years, right? Which there's only been 2 games for the past pretty much 10 years. So if there's only been 2 games and it's only been made by one studio, we all know that Retro Studios is making Metroid Prime 4, and I would think that all hands are on deck for that game. Now, we don't really necessarily know how big Retro is or if they can have a second team working on a brand new Donkey Kong game, but I would guess that if they're gonna make some major changes to the formula, they would need more than whatever they got right there, or it would take pretty much all the people that they do have. So it would definitely have to be after Metroid Prime 4 for the most part. But I think that Tropical Freeze is doing well, so I guess they have time in order to think of some cool ideas and everything. So what would you guys like to see added into the Donkey Kong Country formula for an exclusive or a brand new Donkey Kong game on the Nintendo Switch? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Let me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for latest RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace!